Welcome to the Chautauqua Bait Company. I'm Matt. I'm the executive lure crafter around here. Today I'm going to be showing you a couple baits that I've made recently. I'm going to be sending these out to mybaitshop.com tomorrow, and before I did, I want to get a little bit of footage of these lures. Over here on the left I've got 4 lures that I call Maniac missiles. And then one lure here that's a popper style bait that I call a screamer. And then on the right here, I've got 2 mechanical frog lures. Now I make these lures in 2 different sizes. My larger mechanical frog is called a lily pad leaper. And then these smaller frogs I call pond hoppers. So I've got 2 pond hoppers, and I'll show you how these work in a minute. Starting over here on the left, I'll talk a little bit about these Maniac missiles. They're little unique characters. No one is alike, and they each have names. So this bait here, I've named this Panic Attack. Next we have the hideous blobfish. This one is called Jacko Lure. This guy here with a cigar, which happens to be my favorite of this batch, is named Raging Inferno. And then this screamer is called the Screaming Banshee. So the Panic Attack lure is a subsurface bait. It is weighted with some lead in the belly to kind of keep it oriented correctly in the water. It's also got this diving lip here, which helps it dive a little bit under the surface. The hideous blobfish is weighted fairly extensively. I put quite a bit of lead into the belly of this lure before covering it over with an epoxy putty. It's a pretty ugly lure. I thought it'd just be a pretty kind of a weird character to make. It's modeled after the actual blobfish, which is like a fish that lives in extreme ocean depths. We have Halloween coming up, so in that spirit I did make this jack-o'-lantern type torpedo bait here. This one, which like I said is my favorite of this batch, is named Raging Inferno. So it's got a cigar in the front. Obviously he has a bit of a temper. I used a piece of craft plywood to add this kind of flame fin on the back of the bait. This one here is kind of a popper style bait. Screaming Banshee is kind of some sort of ghost painted with some iridescent purple colors. So these baits, I carved these from poplar. Poplar is a hardwood, but I find it holds detail really well for carving. So I start with my Dremel. I have various Dremel bits of varying precision that I use to sculpt the face of each bait. And then to do the really fine detail work, I use a wood burner. Then after I'm done with all the sculpting, eventually I do paint these with acrylic paints. They're all hand painted. And then I clear coat them with an automotive clear coat to protect the paint. So these 2 baits here, like I said, are called pond hoppers. I've made a fair number of these in the past. These 2 here are a little bit different than the ones I've made in the past. So they've got these 2 double hooks that are secured to the belly. In the past I've used dangling trebles, but I wanted the hooks to have a more fixed position so they don't interfere with the legs. The way this bait works is when you pull the line tie, it actually kicks the legs. So this is a floating bait. It's a topwater bait, and the idea is as you're pulling it through the water, giving it little kicks, it mimics a frog swimming through the water. So this line here is made from 80-pound spider wire, which also runs through the legs. But I tend to put a lot of thought into how I engineer these baits. I consider that as much a part of the artistic process as is the sculpting and painting. So even though I recognize that at the end of the day, the person who buys this is probably going to be a collector, and a collector probably isn't going to be using this type of bait. It's probably going to be something that's more of a display piece. Nonetheless, I do design these with function in mind at every step of the process, and I do take a certain amount of pride in coming up with novel mechanisms. So each of these baits will come with a box. Some of the Maniac missiles are going to be using this traditional box. It's a sleeve and tray. I make these myself. A couple of them that could not fit in that, I do have these square boxes. They kind of have a custom label. These are labels that I designed a number of years ago. And then the pod hoppers do have their own specially labeled box here. The Maniac missiles and the Screamer will also come with these display stands. So these are some stands that I've made from Spanish cedar. I do appreciate you watching, and I thank everyone who continues to like my Facebook page, and especially those who are able to purchase baits. I really do appreciate that. This is a hobby that I really enjoy. This last year I've been kind of inactive with this hobby because my most recent son was born. He's 7 months old now, so I've been very busy. I've had zero time for lures, but I am starting to get a little bit of time out here in my workshop. So I do plan on trying to ramp up the hobby a little bit, produce some more product, and also I'm going to be making some videos. I've got a pretty decent camera set up here, and so I've been working on some making of videos showing my processes, and hopefully you guys will find those videos enjoyable. So those will be on my YouTube page, which I plan on developing.